guys. Welcome to the Football Diary podcast. And it's a strange vibe today because obviously the European Championships is finished. And England were disappointingly beaten on penalties. I say disappointing, that's a massive understatement. It was absolutely heartbreaking, to be fair. Penalties is never easy to watch. But I think on reflection, you have to say the better team won. The dust has settled a bit now, Myles. What are your thoughts? You predicted Italy. It's a bittersweet way to be proven right, really, isn't it? But how you feeling? Sum it up for me, mate.
Yeah, I'm taking no comfort in that, sadly. It's a somber mood, isn't it? It's a weird podcast to do, to come on and talk about England losing the final. I think I'm still just trying to be grateful for the fact that we even got there. And I think we did such a good job. It was such a wonderful tournament that I'm trying to take the positives from it, reflect on the brilliant moments that it gave us, and the unity that it gave us for a time. It's sad to see that obviously that's disappeared quickly afterwards, but sadly it's also not unexpected. I don't know. It's easy to reflect on the game now and say, this is where we went wrong. These were the things that I would have changed. But we said that about pretty much every single game, that we would have made different decisions and things weren't exactly what we expected. But we were proven wrong time after time. So I don't think there can be too much criticism of the England team. Definitely not of Southgate. Definitely not of the boys who missed the penalties. It's really frustrating to see that for them. But in answer to the question, how am I feeling? I'm still gutted, mate. I'm broken up about it. I found it really, really tough to take. I think particularly, and I'm sure we'll go into detail of the match more later on, but particularly the moment when Pickford saves Jorginho's penalty was the highest of highs. And in that moment, I think all of us were just so excited by what had just happened. Yeah. It felt like we'd won it. And we still had loads to do from that point. But that moment felt so good. And within 30 seconds, it was the worst feeling you could have. And that extreme high to low crushed me.
Yeah. Like Jorginho penalty as well. I was screaming at the telly, he's not going to miss. He never misses. So that was in itself a huge surprise. And like you said, the high from seeing a Jorginho penalty saved was stupidly high. Like it was like on the edge of your seat stuff. But then for Saka to miss the ultimate penalty, poor fella, honestly. I mean, we'll talk about the aftermath of those misses later on, but I think your heart just immediately sunk and then immediately went to sort of the poor guys that have missed. How are they going to cope with that? But Dave, the dust has settled a bit now for you. How are you feeling about, I don't know, the tournament as a whole from an England fan's perspective, but also just as a football fan generally?
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange feeling, really. Disappointed, obviously, like I say, an understatement. But I think more disappointment because I didn't expect us to get this far and didn't expect us to get to the final. Obviously, once you get to the final, it's never nice, obviously, losing it. But I didn't get really a sense. The game itself wasn't exciting for me. I thought it was, we scored the goal in the first minute, second minute, and after that we kind of we had promising moments in that first half where we looked like we could get in behind them, but nothing really came to fruition.
It was tantalisingly sort of close chinks of gaps in their defence, in their armoury, wasn't there for moments, but they held really, really firm, didn't they, Dave? I mean, could you see us going on another sort of 15, 20 minutes after extra time and trying to get something? Because I couldn't see us getting anywhere. We looked out of ideas for me.
No, and I think we looked like we had it drilled into us that we were structured to sit back and hit on the counter. But it seemed though whenever we kind of got the ball in that area, there was a few occasions when there was just no support. It looked as though the players were kind of instructed not to kind of get too far up the pitch. But it's almost.
Before you go any further, Dave, I just want to try a new feature of the pod out because I feel like I need to bring this on whenever you're here. So bear with me. Floor's yours, Dave. Have you rant? Didn't expect that, did you?
Oh, I didn't. I've not got anything lined up for you. Any rants?
Liar.
I'm sure you have. I'm sure you can pick some kind of like, oh, Southgate should have done this, or why didn't we do that? Because I know I've got a few, but I'm trying to stay positive. To be fair.
The second half was so poor. We were just so. I think that was probably the most disappointing thing part of the game is we just had no foot in the game and no control, and he didn't look to change that. I think the one thing you look at, and it's, you've got to take risks to win matches, and I think probably Bellingham would have been the substitute I probably would have made to bring into midfield. Once Mancini made that change in the second half, he brought Immobile off, didn't he?
Yeah,
brought that extra player on kind of in the midfield areas. It just kind of put a little bit more pressure on us, and we just couldn't get a foothold. And I feel like we needed a bit more tenacity and energy in there. I don't feel as though Phillips and Rice provide that sort of energy that Bellingham does. And it's not just that, he can carry the ball up the pitch and he can take pressure off the team, and it's just something we couldn't do. And that was a frustrating
preview there, didn't we? We said that the midfield was probably the area where we were going to be outrun, going to be outclassed. I mean, to be fair, they held their own for a while. I think Rice and Phillips are a combative duo, but then he went and brought Jordan Henderson on, and I thought maybe he's recovered enough and done enough in training for Southgate to sort of go, yeah, he can make a difference for me here. But that link between the defence and attack, like you said, Dave, only came down the wide areas, didn't it, really? But Myles, was that where the game was lost for you in midfield? Did it pan out as you expected it to?
Yeah, sadly, exactly as I expected it to. I think maybe I said it on the podcast. I'm not sure. I think I did. But if not, it was something that I was saying. I knew that Southgate would change to a 3-4-3 for the final, and the midfield would be the area that we lost the game in, because Phillips and Rice have had a great tournament. But if you're going to line up two midfielders against that Italy midfield, they're going to be tired. And they were. Rice had to come off because he'd done so much running that it just meant that all of their energy and all of their thoughts were consumed in pressing. And then as soon as they got the ball, they were just so wasteful in possession. Like, the only people who seemed to have any intent when it came to passing were Stones and Maguire at the back. They passed it around each other a little bit just to lay it back to Pickford for him to lump it long. We've seen England do that before. It's really disappointing, but it wasn't a surprise. I think 4-3-3 was the right option in this game. And I don't want to sound like I'm critical of Southgate. I don't think he got it right in this game. However, he's got us to a final after getting us to a semi-final. He deserves so much credit and so much praise. But on this occasion, I think he overthought it. I think he got it wrong. He thinks that the only way to play against big teams is with that three at the back. It depends on who the big team is. You've got a side in Italy who... And it worked in the first half to an extent. It definitely worked in the opening exchanges in the first couple of minutes with the goal. Their fullbacks are going to fly forward and they'll give you space in behind. Their centre-backs are older and slower and do not want to have to run back towards their own goal. You don't want to be dragged into spaces that they don't normally occupy. If you're not playing a number 10, that doesn't happen to them. They stand firm, they stand facing your attack. That's what they need. If you also then don't play proper wingers, really, Mount and Sterling looked like they were lost. Mount was useless, if we're 100% honest. He was useless most of the tournament. He was completely anonymous. And that's a shame, because I think I said to you, I never really got it with Mason Mount. And then after this season, I thought, flipping heck, he's proved me very, very wrong. He's a very good footballer. But he's not at the tournament. He was England's most underwhelming player by a distance. And Dave's right. When it came to changing the midfield and to fixing that scenario, it took way too long. Eventually, he brings Trippier off and brings Jack on to try and... Or it might have even been Saka that came on first, wasn't it? I think it was. It was Saka that came on first. To try and move to that four at the back and try and go for it a little bit more. It took way too long. When they took Rice off, bringing on Henderson, I've said enough about what I think of Jordan Henderson on this podcast. I think he's absolutely useless, and he was dreadful on the day. He didn't do anything. He didn't bring anything. He's got less energy than Rice. He's not as good at winning the ball back, and he just plays the ball sideways as well. So it was just a pointless option. There was no brave choice. There was no, let's bring Bellingham on as an extra midfielder, not instead of one of the midfielders. That should have happened. Jack should have come on much, much earlier. Asking him to try and influence the game in a short space of time was near impossible. He pretty much did. Jorginho could have been sent off for that challenge.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, it's not a shame, but you know what I mean? Maybe he should have been. I don't know. It's a frustrating one to take. There are definitely things that I think we can all look at and go, why? But on the surface of things, the better team won, if we're 100% honest. They are a better team.
I think that's the crux of it. I think we've met our match, more than met our match in the final. We outplayed ourselves brilliantly, I think, for 2018. But I think this was the year where we were good enough to be in the final. But Italy were just that class above. Their players in most positions, I think, were just better than ours. And football isn't as simple as that, I know. But in this game, it was, because Southgate didn't do anything different tactically to try and challenge them at all. Like you said, their strength is in midfield. Their midfield three was superb again. Jorginho superb again. And we joke about Ballon d'Or contenders, but his name's in the conversation now, isn't it? I think after the season he's had. But yeah, the midfield never changed, or didn't change enough. Wasn't dynamic enough. Wasn't creative enough. I saw a few foreign journalists sort of saying throughout the tournament, the theme for England was all that talent at our disposal, and we didn't use it. We didn't try to use it. We just tried to not lose. And I felt like that was the case for when we went 1-0 up in the final. We tried not to lose a little bit. And even when we went to 1-1, it wasn't a case of any urgency to break them down or to try and go past them. And the changes that Southgate made didn't seem like he was trying anything new or different. And that's what we needed, really, wasn't it? But fair play to Italy. I think they were fantastic again. They've proven themselves to be the best team in Europe, I think. I can't see another team that is as cohesive a unit and as talented a team as they are. I thought Chiesa was fantastic. Obviously, Bonucci
so good.
Immovable, weren't they? So what did you make of Italy, Dave? I mean, they were the champions and worthy champions, really, weren't they?
Yeah, and obviously we spoke earlier on in the tournament about how they were going to, perform when they came up against one of the big teams, and they kind of showed, they passed that with flying colours. They've beaten, a lot of big teams in this tournament, and they've shown that as a unit, they've been the strongest in the tournament by far. There was a bit, to be honest, there were a few moments in the game where I thought they didn't have a huge amount of chances. Obviously, I know England, barely did anything in the game, but there was not a lot created by Italy either. But they did look the more likely to score. I feel as though, you speak about that midfield, and it just kind of, they kept it ticking over. And even though when you watched them against Spain, Spain actually dominated that game. They had 65% possession or something like that. They could have potentially won that time. They still looked a threat on the break, and it's where they've scored a lot of their goals. Obviously, they scored one against Belgium, didn't they, on the break? Was it Insigne into the far corner? So they've looked a threat, as well as, just kind of being able to keep the ball, recycle possession, press well, etc. They've kind of been the full package, and we don't need to talk about how they defend. They've always been a brilliant defensive side. So no need kind of admire what they've done, and you got to say Mancini's done a brilliant job.
Yeah. I mean, fair play to you, Myles. You called it at the start of the tournament and said Italy were favourites for you, and the form they were in going into the tournament was so impressive that I don't know why more people didn't see that they had this in their locker. But I think the way that some of their players have performed is a credit to Mancini's faith in just trying something new. He's made, I think, 35 debutants since he's been in charge. He's not afraid to try different players and break away from sort of the big four Serie A teams. And the players he's brought in have been fantastic. So to name a few, Donnarumma was player of the tournament in the end. This final performance was fantastic, for all England missed penalties. No, he actually saved them. He read them so well that, apart from the Rashford one, he got to them in the right place at the right time. That's what a goalkeeper should do. Spinazzola's obviously been voted in the UEFA team of the tournament, and rightly so, and he didn't even feature for the final stages, so that's how good of an impact he had. Chiesa didn't play for the start of the tournament, but look how he came into it since he's been involved. He's been fantastic. So Myles, are you surprised? Probably not, but what do you make of this Italy team and their achievement, and where does it rank amongst all of their achievements overall? Because they've won a lot, but this means a lot more, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, they've been absolutely fantastic, obviously, and it's not a surprise. That squad is incredible, and we knew that the midfield was going to be the biggest issue. And I think if you look at it on the surface, Rice and Phillips start for England. Do they get in the Italy squad, let alone the starting 11? They've had a fantastic tournament. It's no criticism of them, but it's hard to compete with that kind of level of quality. It is. And people talk about the quality that England have in that squad and it being one of the best squads in Europe. You'd only say that about the attacking players, really. And I think Italy, on the other hand, the depth that they have, the quality they have, it's so underrated in this country. Italy have had a reputation for years of being that defensive side, and you can understand why. But there is a new generation of Italian talent coming through. People like Chiesa, for example, who like to be more direct. Look at how often he picked the ball up and just ran through the middle, took 3 players out of the game. That's so threatening. It's really hard to know how to deal with that. And he really shone for me in the latter stages of the tournament. And we said at the start, we thought he would have a good tournament. Lorenzo Insigne stepped up when it mattered and scored some great goals, put in some great performances. Immobile might not have scored the amount of goals that you would have liked him to, but I still think he had some great performances. He really contributed towards the attack. But mainly it's Mancini. Mancini deserves so much credit.
Yeah,
I love Southgate. I think he's done a great job. But are there any better international managers than Mancini right now? Are there any managers on the international stage that you look at and think they're as good a manager as Mancini?
No, he's elite. I think he's an elite coach, and he could be a club manager for any club now. I mean, what he's achieved at the clubs he's been at has been overlooked in many ways, but this international achievement is kind of makes him up there, doesn't it, with the most elite managers of his generation?
And watch Italy for the next tournament too, because it's a year and a half away. But some of the players that missed out on this tournament will be a year or 2 years older as well. And that's scary. They've got depth. They've got the 2 Roma midfielders, Pellegrini and Zaniolo, to come back in. Moise Kean just had a great season with PSG. Who knows where he'll be at? Maybe Immobile won't even be starting in the next tournament. They've got depth. Donnarumma's only going to get more experience. It's ridiculous. The amount of games he's played already at his young age, he's clearly someone that they can rely on. Now, they also had the old guard of Chiellini and Bonucci, who just were outstanding in this tournament and carried them with leadership. And the reason that they got such a defensive record, such a good defensive record, is massively down to them too. So it will be interesting to see where they go from here. In terms of what kind of achievement it is, it's a fantastic achievement considering where they came from when Mancini took over. They were in an awful state. Yeah. And he's now lost 2 games out of 40 in charge, I think. They're still unbeaten. That's an amazing run. To win a tournament after not qualifying for the last one, that's a remarkable turnaround. So yeah, it's a fantastic achievement, well deserved. I think Donnarumma getting player of the tournament is interesting to me. He did have a very good tournament, was a very good keeper, saved as many penalties in the final as Pickford did, though.
Yeah,
I think it's worth noting. He's player of the tournament because Italy won it.
That's it.
He wouldn't have. If Rashford scores his penalty and Donnarumma still saves 2, does Donnarumma get player of the tournament? I don't think so.
But I think they leave it till the very end, don't they, to decide? So they wait till all the drama's played out. Yeah. And they've not got long to decide. So I think they look at the winning team and think which of these players has had the biggest impact. And it's that recency syndrome of like who is still in their mind right now. And Donnarumma was obviously the one that saved the day in their eyes. So I can see why it was given. But so many other players, I think, impressed from the team. You could have picked a few, couldn't you?
Well, we said it after the penalty shootout against Spain. Donnarumma's penalty record is so outstanding, and he's such a presence that you knew if this game went to penalties, England didn't have a hope. Because who were England's penalty takers going to be? I don't think any of us would have predicted the 5 that it was. Not a chance. No. Italy's you probably would have predicted. You knew. And even if you didn't, the ones that probably would have stepped up instead would be just as good, if not better, than some of them. I didn't have confidence in a penalty shootout. Pickford was outstanding, did what he needed to do. Saving Jorginho's, like, might have been my moment of the tournament. I just wish it was longer lived, because it was amazing. The fact that he tipped it onto the post and then it kind of bounced back off him as well, and you thought, I don't know if he saved it. It was brilliant. But I don't know. I think the Italians have just got such depth. They've got a great style of football. But they also know how to be pragmatic, and that's really good. They seem like they've got a great feeling in the camp. People keep talking about England having a good atmosphere, but Italy seem really up for it. But they've also got that kind of streetwise attitude that maybe some of that England's young squad lacks. I wonder whether that'll be the case in the next tournament. You've got a few players that I think show it and showcase it, but not like Italy. They know.
Well, I think that comes from Mancini in the end. I think Mancini is quite a battling character, and he is a player. He was a bit like that as well. And I've heard stories of him at Man City squaring up to the likes of sort of Balotelli and fireworks on the training ground. So, he's a manager that doesn't really take low standards. And I think he's kind of instilled that relentless mentality into his squad. I mean, that's where him and Southgate differ quite a lot, because Southgate's a lot more calm and reserved. And even when it gets a really pumped start sort of moment in the game, because it's still in the middle of play, he rightly stays calm, and that's fine. But he never overspills, and he never looks like overly passionate, I'd say. He had a few fist pump moments, didn't he? And I think at the World Cup, he famously did as well. But Mancini as a coach, I think he is the embodiment of Italy. And I know we're looking further ahead into the future, but if they were to replace him, it'd be weird to see where they would go after that, because they have become his character so much, haven't they? But enough about Italy. I want to talk about England, because the dust has settled a bit now. We can sort of evaluate how England did. Let's look at the positives, because we would have said semi-final as a minimum would have been an achievement. We got to the final, not just the final, but we pushed it to penalties. Agonising as that is, that's such an achievement. We were a whisker away from winning the damn thing. And so many players were rightly included in the UEFA team of the tournament as well. Some players have absolutely played out of their skins and done themselves no end of favours. The value of Jordan Pickford now after this tournament from before must have risen 10, 15 million as well at least. So England did brilliantly. We have to sort of accept when the better team won. I think we've done that pretty graciously here. But Dave, where are you going to look ahead to the future for England? Which positives can you take from the tournament from an England perspective?
I think obviously, we've got some youthful players coming through. Like we already mentioned now, obviously the penalties, I don't feel as though some of those were the right choices. Without making the choice of putting Saka and Sancho and Rashford. I was surprised Rashford missed that penalty, to be honest. I expected him to score. It was just his run up didn't look right. To be honest, when he stepped up, it just wasn't how he normally takes penalties for Man United. So I can only think maybe the pressure of it kind of got to him. I think you can only say that the younger players that are coming up and how they've approached it. I think you can say the inexperienced players like Rice and Phillips, how they've handled themselves in this tournament, with kind of a lack of national experience. They've actually played really well, and it's been encouraging. Along with Luke Shaw as well, he's not really been a mainstay at that left back role, and he's kind of, I'd probably say he's probably been England's best player in the tournament. So I think really encouraging. I still feel as though we lack a match winner or two, or whether we use the right system to make the most of some of the attacking plays that we do.
Yeah,
that we have.
I think that's the puzzle for the next sort of phase of qualifiers and things like that, is trying to think how you do get these players to gel in the front line. But I'll pass it over to you, Myles. You've probably got quite a bit to say as well. But what are you taking away from this England performance, and what positives do you think that Southgate can sort of take forward if he stays on? Because his future still seemed a bit uncertain at the end of the press conference.
I think he said, didn't he, that he will take them to Qatar. So I think we can be quite confident that he'll be at the World Cup. And I'm glad of that. I am. Because I think one positive to take is just the psychological hurdle that we overcame by getting to a final in the first place. First time in 55 years. I think when I think back to when I did my predictions at the start of the tournament, I had England going out in the first knockout round. And I don't think that was that unreasonable a prediction, really, when you saw who we were going to be lined up against. So to have got all the way to a final and to have been quite literally one kick away, really, or maybe two, I guess you could say, from winning the thing. It's not that's such a fine margin that you've got to be proud, at least, of what they've achieved. My biggest positive is the defence. the fact that through the whole tournament they conceded 2 goals. It's frustrating that they're both set-piece goals, really. But Harry Maguire obviously had such a good World Cup that he got the move to Man United and people started questioning his value. And we've not really seen the Harry Maguire that we would maybe expect at Man United, but he was outstanding in this tournament. John Stones didn't do a typical John Stones and have a rick or anything or any sort of errors. He was brilliant. And the fullbacks were just outstanding. Luke Shaw was sensational. He's very unfortunate that Spinazzola had such a good tournament and then got injured, because otherwise comfortably the best. I still think he was the best left back in the tournament, but I think the narrative means Spinazzola gets it too. Kyle Walker just was outstanding. He just impressed me every single game. His calmness, his leadership, his recovery pace. It's amazing. How many times in this tournament did we see the ball come across the box and Kyle Walker take this risky idea to just like chest the ball back to Pickford or let the ball run across his body and let it go out for it, when anyone else you'd think would panic in that moment. But he's so assured and he's got the pace to back himself up that I just think he was brilliant.
Yeah,
I think like Dave says, there's room to grow. There's young players there that will get better and better, and a year and a half will be interesting. I hope though that some other players get back into the thought of Southgate more. I don't want to sound like I'm criticising the decisions he made because he got us as far as he did, but I do wonder why we didn't see more of Sancho. I definitely don't understand why we didn't see more of Grealish. And I think in that last game in particular, when you know that Italy's fullbacks are going to press high, I understand why you put someone with a good work rate to track them. However, it leaves so much space for you to get in behind. So when you have a right-hand side of Trippier and Mount, that is not the pace that you are going to use to exploit an advancing fullback. Very obviously. We had that player on the bench in Jadon Sancho. When the midfield was struggling so hard to hold on to the ball, retain possession, and be creative, why you don't have Grealish on the pitch, who I think created more goal-scoring opportunities per 90 minutes than any player in the tournament, is nuts to me.
Yeah.
And the thing with Grealish as well, and we've talked about it so many times, is even if he's not creating chances, he's getting fouled and you keep the ball and you have a chance to move up the pitch, calm themselves down, progress. England looked like they needed to do that massively in the final. So Southgate, I do hope that he just sits and has a conversation with some of these lads and works out a plan to integrate them properly. Because I understand playing a system. I understand he has a plan in place. I don't want to become England of 2006, 2010, where you just shoehorn your best players in.
Yeah, of course.
Sacrifice system. But it feels like they really easily fit in. And it would be very easy to have 3 behind Kane with Sterling, Grealish and Sancho. That seems so obvious to me.
I think he's got a lot of issues with trust with certain players. He definitely has his favourites. I think the legacy of 2018 has shone through for a lot of players this time around. But whether in a year and a half's time we'll see a top form Kyle Walker still, or a top form Kieran Trippier, or are they going to have the same level of performance in a year and a half's time as they've got now? Don't forget, there's players who haven't made the cut as well. Trent Alexander-Arnold's coming back in. There's a few there that you could consider. So how he plays the qualifiers leading up to that, and which players he tests out as well, will be pretty interesting.
The only thing that worries me is who does he have to test out? Because really, their weakest area, and again, I think Calvin Phillips and Rice had brilliant tournaments and played well above the level that anyone would have expected of them. But that is our weakest area, that midfield. There isn't anyone to test out. Bellingham will get better because he'll be slightly older. Short of that, then what?
I think he'll start building a team around Jude Bellingham. I really will, because he is the future of that midfield. He definitely trusts Calvin Phillips now. He's been tried and trusted. He played every single minute of every single game, including extra time. So Calvin Phillips is definitely up there with a player that he sees as a comfortable, reliable starter for him. But whether he still thinks Declan Rice is that player, I don't know. It depends what kind of season he has with West Ham and if he stays with them, really, doesn't it? But Bellingham is the one, I think. He's the shining light. He's 18 and only just 18. He's going to get better. He's probably not going to stay at Dortmund for too long either, but he'll stay there long enough to learn an education, won't he? So for me, I think that's the future of the midfield. But the depth isn't there, is it, beyond that? Let's face it. Anyone that wasn't already in the conversation for this squad is not really going to find a way into the World Cup squad potentially. I think who's missed out? James Maddison, Dele Alli, they're all attacking players still. So in the midfield, who is there? There's nobody really that's class. So yeah, we'll see. There's positives. I want to say positive. Let's stay on the positives. It was an overachievement in some ways by the team, as was 2018 really. So he did really well for that. And every single decision that Southgate made throughout the tournament seemed to just come off until this game, and in particular probably the second half. And I think the most baffling thing for me was the late substitutions just for penalties. I could not sort of feel more sorry for Jadon Sancho and Marcus Rashford coming on when they did, with that weight of expectation on their shoulders. Honestly, as soon as they came onto the pitch, I think we commented on it, didn't we? That no pressure, guys. You know, it's only the last few minutes of a game. The only thing you're being brought on for is penalties. You better take it and you better score it well. And they didn't. And I know Gareth Southgate's come forward and said, that's on me. But the amount of backlash that those players have received was sadly inevitable, wasn't it, really? And again, we'll talk about that in a moment. But the penalties, Dave, what was the story there? What happened? Why make that kind of cavalier decision at that stage of the tournament, the very last few minutes?
Well, I think his plan kind of backfired on him, obviously. But in terms of Trippier, you would expect he probably would have been one of the 5 had he not gone off. And I think Mason Mount would have been one of the 5 to take one had he not gone off. Seems as though Kane and Maguire were kind of, penciled in. And the last 3 were sort of just made up. Whether Rashford might have been on the pitch, we don't know. Obviously, he subbed him on, but I don't feel as though Sancho and Saka would have been 2 of the 5. I thought it was bizarre that Saka took that last penalty.
It's strange because Jack Grealish has come out and said that he said, I want to take one, but Southgate chose Saka ahead of him. So, he's defending himself there, because I think a few people, myself included, were critical of probably the senior players not stepping up and going, this guy shouldn't be taking the decisive penalty, put me instead of him. Whether Saka really, really wanted to take that penalty, we'll never know. But there were more proven goal scorers, more proven penalty takers, and more senior players with a better sort of focus and mentality in big moments that you would have chosen, right?
Score penalties in, for Man City. We've seen Luke Shaw, he scored one in the Europa League final, brilliant penalty.
Shaw was
it needed somebody who just, who had a bit of experience in kind of. I feel as though it was almost, okay, you're next in line because you've had the best record in penalties. You're going to go, And the thing is, a player that young isn't going to come out and say, I don't feel comfortable with that. They want to, displease the manager. So they're just going to say, okay, yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, they're going to go along with it. I don't feel as though if he felt really uncomfortable being that last taker, he probably would have come out and said, look, I don't feel right for it. And as a young player, you don't have that maturity to kind of own up to those sort of feelings.
So you think maybe it's on Saka for not speaking out, but I mean that's really for Southgate to read the vibe of the players that he's got, isn't it? And he obviously asked the question before this: who fancies a penalty if it comes to it? I'm guessing away from the pressure of the match, Saka probably said, "Yeah, do you know what I do?" But at that moment, at that time, surely there were people better equipped mentally to take that penalty than him.
Why though? I've heard this argument a lot over the last few days. And I'll be honest, I just think it's a penalty shootout. There's no accounting for any of it. If someone says, yeah, I'll take one, you let them take one. And this whole thing of Sterling should have stepped up. Sterling has scored 4 in 9 with penalties. That is not a good penalty record. I wouldn't be volunteering to step up for my country if I knew that I wasn't very good at something. No way. Way too much riding on it. Sterling might just be humble enough to go, do you know what? I'm probably not the best man for this job. Luke Shaw, I would have liked to have seen take it because he's had such a good tournament. He'd scored a goal, so his confidence, you imagine, would be right up there. He took a good penalty in the Europa League final. I would have loved to have seen him take it, but I wouldn't expect him to. I don't go it and think, well, why didn't Luke Shaw say something? I definitely don't think that of Jack and Sterling. Jack doesn't take penalties either. I've seen him take 2. He scored 1 against West Brom in the playoffs, and he missed 1 in the league. He's not a penalty taker. Yeah. We have Watkins take them, or we have El Ghazi take them. And he's Villa's talisman. So if he's not taking penalties, there's a reason for it. So again, maybe Southgate just watched him in training and thought, these are my 5 best penalty takers that I have on the pitch right now. I don't like bringing subs on for penalty shootouts. I think it's mad because, all right, you're kicking a ball from 12 yards and the advantage is very much in the favour of the attacker. So you should be able to do that at any point. But if you've not grown into the game, you've not had any chance to have any exposure to the atmosphere, to the pace of things, to get yourself motivated in some weird way as well. It's so much pressure. And like you said, Mike, you're coming on and in your head, I'm here for one reason and one reason only. And that might, for some players, spark them on. For some, that is a lot of pressure.
Huge amount.
I'm not any of them for missing. I'm genuinely not, because look, it is what it is. I hate the saying penalties is a lottery. It's not really. The advantage is in the hand of the attacker, but they were coming up against a very, very good goalkeeper. The only one I would mildly blame for missing, and I don't want to sound critical of him because I think he's brilliant, is Rashford, purely because I hate that kind of run-up. It's a penalty. It's a penalty, and you're a very, very good striker of a football. You can hit that ball, just leather it. Look what Maguire did. Maguire just thought, I'm going to hit this as hard as I can. Because if I do, a keeper is never saving that.
Well, I'm thinking mentally as well. You're looking at Donnarumma standing in the goal. He's absolutely huge. Already, that's a mental obstacle. So if you're taking a run-up where you're losing momentum and losing power, and you've got a standing start to shoot, he's got the advantage, or it's at the very best 50-50, isn't it?
And he's thinking more about what am I doing in my run-up than what am I doing when I kick the ball.
Yeah, it's not right.
Harry Kane and Harry Maguire ran and hit their penalty. That's what they did. They just went, right, I'm hitting this in the goal. I'm going to put it in the right place. They didn't fart about, and I hate that with penalties. It does my head in. I know we see Fernandes and Jorginho have this technique that works for them, and it goes right. As soon as it starts going wrong, though, they look very foolish. And I just think, don't add any anomalies. A penalty is given in a match to be an advantage to the attacker. Yet in this shootout, the advantage was not with the attackers with England. Yeah. We scored less than we did. We scored less than we missed. That shouldn't be the case. And if Marcus Rashford, someone who's an attacking player who takes free kicks and can hit a ball, just runs up and smashes that down the middle even. Donnarumma weren't saving it. Donnarumma dived early every single time. If Rashford just ran up and hit that down the middle, I have no doubt he would have scored.
You're right, actually, yeah, I think Donnarumma he got lauded, I think, for his save, which is fair enough. But if you watch the replays of the penalties, both the goalkeepers dived quite late, didn't they, really? So you could have just picked a spot, and if you were even an inch too close to the left of him, you would have leathered it past him. But Maguire had the right idea. By the way, Maguire's penalty was fantastic as well.
The best penalty I've ever seen.
It was brilliant, yeah. It broke the camera on the way in, so amazing. And also Pickford as well, credit to him. I think I always look at him and think he's a bit of a Joe Hart sometimes. He gets really hyped up. But he kept his composure really well. And his tournament it's shown how much of a confidence player he is, but he's flying on confidence at the minute. That's down to Southgate. So his man management, I think, has worked on a load of players. He's going to have to bring it all out, I think, Southgate, in the aftermath of this tournament to sort of bring a few back up to that level, isn't he?
I'd have let him take a penalty.
Who's Southgate? Are you kidding?
No, not Southgate.
he's got history, mate.
Pickford, genuinely. He's taken one before and scored in the Nations League.
Nations League, yeah.
He was confident, and he would have done exactly what I just said. He would have thought, if I'm a goalkeeper, I want to face a penalty where someone runs up and leathers it at me? No. Let him do it. I honestly think that.
Donnarumma would have been confused as hell if that had happened.
I love and major props to Pickford for the fact that when he stood in front of Jorginho's penalty, he was talking to himself. He's going, "You're going to save this? No problem. You've got this. No problem."
Yeah.
The fact that that must have been the highest level of pressure for him. And Jordan Pickford has really won my heart in this tournament. I think he's been absolutely brilliant. And I've loved watching him. I did in the World Cup as well. He's box office. He is a bit, but he's better. I honestly think he's just better than Joe Hart as well. I really like Jordan Pickford. I'm so gutted, mate. Honestly, it's so hard to. We talked about maybe recording yesterday, and I'm kind of glad that we didn't, purely because I just don't think I had the capacity for it. Like after the game, I was crushed. Like I just sat watching the coverage afterwards, like, pretty much silent. And Nia came up to me and said, "Is it not better to turn this off? Is it not making it worse?" And I kind of thought, if I sit here for long enough, maybe VAR will say Donnarumma was off his line, and they'll just come back and do it again. It's not that England lost that upset me either.
It's how close, isn't it? That's the thing.
I don't even think it was that, because they got further than I ever thought they would. I said I thought Italy would win it. It's not a shock. It's not how close. I think it was just that it was over. And like I said to you last time, the unity that it brought, I just felt like we all needed it. It's been a horrible, horrible time for people in this country. And like for us personally, I'm sure we've all had things that this Euros has been a release for. We've been around our loved ones again, been with families watching something that we all have a shared interest in. The three of us, all right, you two are both Man United fans, but we were cheering on the same team in this tournament. That's lovely. I had that with so many people. That's fantastic. And there were genuine moments of real joy. The goals against Germany, the Ukraine display, coming back against Denmark, we were so happy in those moments. And knowing that was over and knowing the ugly things that would follow, if I'm 100% honest, it just felt like everything crashed down again. The emotional high of the whole tournament came to such an abrupt end. And the abuse that the lads received afterwards is just, it's abhorrent.
Yeah.
The behaviour of the fans on the day of the final is, I don't even like calling them fans, because if we're honest, most of them aren't even real football fans. They're just hooligans, thugs and scum that use football as a way to disguise their bigotry. And I hate that it's then England fans do this. No, it's just drunk idiots. Don't call them fans, because if you're a fan of something, you wouldn't do that. If you're a supporter, that's not how you support. They are idiots. That's all it is. But that was it. As soon as that last kick happened, you knew that collective celebration that we all had, that good feeling that the country had back for a little while, was going to be over. And we were going to instead have a news day of England lost the final, these fans got into these fights, this damage was caused, and these players are getting racially abused. And it is just horrible. It's back to a horrible reality. And I'm gutted at that.
Well, this is why we didn't record yesterday. Well, it's better to record today, because I think these feelings, until you've just mentioned them, have mostly kind of subsided, haven't they? We've had a bit of a reality check. It's a very harsh reality check to lose in that way, I think. And you're right. Every single high you've been living through, every day you go and think there's another match around the corner, it's going to be a cracker. That comes to an end. And I know it's the final and that's inevitable, but because your team has lost that way, it's an awful come down, isn't it? It really is. The rest of the stuff that's gone with it, the violence and the abuse, sadly inevitable. I feel sick about everything that I've seen from England fans. I say England fans because the majority, that's not applicable to them at all. The scenes around the country we've seen from sort of beer gardens and box parks and just on the streets has been fantastic. It's been lovely. So this is by no means all England fans, but the minority that come just to cause trouble, let's just forget about them. Yeah, let's deal with them with the harshest possible terms. Let the FA do what they need to do. And let's just celebrate what's been a fantastic tournament, shall we? It's been brilliant. I think we all needed it.
One thing that's worth celebrating on that note, though, is the players' response once again, and it is a shocking indictment of society when really the most logical voices around and the only people that seem to be able to stand up are footballers. When you are having your country run by people who are quite openly endorsing racist behavior, genuinely, if we're 100% honest, that it's shocking that it takes someone like Marcus Rashford to make changes. It's shocking that it takes Tyrone Mings to challenge these people. These are footballers. They are in the public eye because they're good at one thing, kicking a football. And all of a sudden, they've now got this weight of responsibility of now actually being leaders in society, and fair play to them for taking it on. Yeah, for every headline there is negative about Grealish when he's a teenager being drunk on the floor, or various things that different players got up to during COVID and stuff. At the end of the day, they're just human beings who are good at football. But now they're being forced into this new position of having to stand up for themselves in a circumstance that it shouldn't be on them. It shouldn't be their responsibility, but it all of a sudden is. And that's horrible. They don't deserve that. But I'm incredibly proud of them, not just for the performance they put in this summer, which I definitely am proud of them for. They overachieved massively in my eyes. They made me so happy to be an England fan. I thoroughly enjoyed every moment of their football, but also afterwards, do you know what? They can hold their heads up very, very high. And I look forward to them being back together as a camp again.
I think, unfortunately, the diversity of this squad, culturally, ethnically, is one of the small reasons why those minorities cause so much trouble. And that's pretty obvious. But also on the flip side, that same value of ethnic diversity, cultural diversity, backgrounds, representative of most people in the UK, is why so many people have got behind the England team this summer and the last tournament as well. I think they represent so many of society, don't they? Yeah. That's uncomfortable for some people to admit. But I think for those that are open to those values and that kind of inclusivity, they feel involved with it now. And the amount of people that are England fans because of those players and because of what they stand for and because of what they've come up against and been through and overcome, it's a great story. And it's a very likeable squad. And that's a brilliant thing to have representing.
Even aside from the issues around racism, it is such a likable squad. As characters, they've just been fantastic. I noticed that they were donating all of the proceeds or all of their earnings to NHS charities, which, all right, they don't necessarily need the money that they get from international football. But what a gesture that is.
They shouldn't have to do that, though. That's the state of our country, isn't it? Where they feel like they're obliged to do that as well.
Already we've seen the actions in social justice for people like Rashford initiating the free school meals. Just little bits of fan footage. The thing with Mason Mount and that young fan was so lovely. I've seen a video of Jack going into the stands after the final and giving his boots to a young lad and taking photos. Those players must have been heartbroken in that moment. Yeah. But instead, they do seem like they just really care about being England players. We've not always had that. So it is the most likable squad we've had in so long. When I'm getting Blues fans come up to me and go, flipping heck, I'll pretend this isn't true in August, but I love that Jack Grealish. And I'm going, go on, Jude Bellingham. Like, that happens. We all have become in love with this England team. And they've done so much on the pitch and off the pitch to earn that. I'm honestly, Dave is just sat very quietly, but I'm hoping you're feeling the same thing, that we're just proud, right?
Yeah, we've ranted a lot, Dave. I mean, surely you agree with all that, but have you got anything else you want to sort of add, just to finish off, really?
I think the only thing I can say, really, I don't want to end it in a negative note, but I think something needs to be done with social media. It's just a toxic breeding ground, it seems. And I think the sad thing is that whenever we see, I think we all anticipated it. We saw the players missed those penalties and we knew exactly what was coming after it.
Yeah. And the sad thing is, if it was Harry Kane that missed a decisive penalty, we know that Kane would have been shielded from any criticism because it's Harry Kane.
Yeah.
To not put it any more starkly than that, really, that's
wrong. There would have been abuse here and there, but it wouldn't have been
not like that.
Not like that, no. That's the thing.
It's something that needs to be done now. I'm not a fan. So.
No, but I mean, on the whole,
of course, it's lovely seeing things like, obviously, which you speak of, obviously, players gifted memorabilia to fans and things like that. That's absolutely brilliant. But it's making the headlines for all the wrong reasons, really.
Yeah. And the final note as well, just to add, massive congratulations to Argentina lifting the Copa America title. That was a great achievement for them. And obviously, as a Villa fan, to see Emi Martinez come to the sort of form he's displayed over the last year and a half is incredible. But seeing Messi lift a trophy as well continues the debate of who's the greatest of all time. There's so many narratives there, isn't there? But yeah, wicked one for Argentina as well. But in terms of football on the horizon, there's not a lot to talk about going forward. So just looking forward to the Premier League. It's a few weeks away still. The season start, the Community Shield, and everything that comes with that. But in the meantime, we'll stay in touch, guys. We'll keep these pods going. We'll find stuff to talk about. The transfer of rumour mill's always moving, isn't it? I'm sure we'll have a lot to say about that.
And let's just say that
2020, what a great tournament, right?
Yeah, exactly. Let's just say, flipping heck, England. You might have lost on that day, but well done, man. What a wicked tournament that was.
Yeah. Absolute goosebumps, I think, when we watch the highlights reel of this tournament from an England perspective. Maybe that's when the pride will hit in. I think we'll get a bit choked watching it as well. So yeah, thanks guys for your time throughout this tournament, and we'll speak again soon. Take care.
See you later, guys.